Hi learners, this is Mrs. C. Suganti, Assistant Professor, Department of Business Administration with Computer Applications, St. Joseph's College of Arts and Science for Women, Hosur. Today, I'm going to discuss with you about long-term sources of finance. So what is meant by long-term sources of finance and what are all the aspects that is contributing to the long-term sources of finance? In the first one is in equity shares. Equity shares are the common source of finance. They are also known as ordinary shares and represent the owner's capital in the company. The holders, the equity share holders, we called as real owners of the company. These equity shareholders, when they are getting a dividend, means if the company is earning profit alone, the equity shareholders are getting dividend. If not, if the company is not generating a profit means the equity shareholders are not getting dividend. Equity shareholders take more risk regarding dividend as well as return of capital. And the next is in features of equity shares. What are all the features that equity share is possessing means? The first and foremost one is permanent capital. Already I told you the equity shareholders are the real owners of an organization. So that person's contribution we called as permanent capital. And the second one is an right to dividend. The equity shareholders are having right to get dividend from the company when if the company is earning profit alone. If not, the equity shareholders are not getting dividend. Then the next feature is control. What is meant by control? Already I told you the equity shareholders are real owners of your organization. So they are having voting rights, the control over the management. Then the fourth one is in limited liability. This is a very important features of key equity shares. Liability of the shareholders is limited to the issue price of shares, not more than that. Then the last feature is preemptive right. What is meant by preemptive right? When a company issues additional shares, the existing shareholders have a right to purchase new shares in the same proportion of their current holding. So this we called as preemptive rights. And the second source of long-term source is preference shares. The preference shares enjoy two preferences. What are all the two preferences? First, the dividend on these shares is to be paid prior to any dividend on equity shares. Second, preference shares are to be redeemed before any payment is made to the equity shareholders at the time of liquidation. The next, features of preference shares. That the first one is in maturity. Each and every preference shares are having maturity period. So after the maturity period gets over, the preference shareholders can get back the share capital amount what they invested in the organization. The next, fixed dividend. So at the time of issuing preference share itself, the company is deciding the dividend percentage to the preference shareholders. So the preference shareholders are getting fixed dividend every year. Then third one is in control. The preference shareholders are not a real owner of an organization. So the preference shareholders are not having voting rights. The next one, claim on assets. At the time of liquidation, preference shareholders have a preference in the payment of capital. Their claim is to be settled before making any payment to equity shareholders, but they are not entitled to any surplus. Then the last one is an hybrid security. The preference shares are having a hybrid security. Then the third one is in debentures or bonds. So what is meant by debentures? The debentures or bonds are financial securities issued by companies to raise long-term loan from the public. They are generally redeemable after the stipulated period. Debentures carry a fixed rate of interest which is payable periodically. Then the next is in features of debentures. So what are all the features that the debenture should possess means the first one is in maturity. This debenture is also having a maturity period. The next is in fixed rate of interest. Yes, this debenture is also having a fixed rate of interest. Then next is in preference in payment. In the event of liquidation, debenture holders are to be paid before preference shareholders and equity shareholders. Then the fourth one is in charge on assets. Debentures are generally secured. The debenture holders may have a specific charge on the asset or a floating charge on all the assets of the company. Then the fifth one is in tax deductible of interest. The debenture is a loan raised by the company. Interest on debenture is an expense. Interest on debenture is an expense. It is allowed as a deduction in the computation of income tax. And the last one is in control. So the debenture holders are lenders of money to the company. It's not a owners of the company. So they do not have any voting rights or any control over the management of the company. The next is in term loans. So where we can get the term loans? Yes, it's right. We are getting a term loan from the financial institutions. They are an important source of long-term funds. In India, term loans are provided by financial institutions and banks for financing large expansion, modernization, and diversification projects. Therefore, this method of financing is popularly known as project financing. Then features of term loans. So what are all the features that the term loan is possessing means the first one is in maturity. So the term loan is also having a maturity period. Then the second one is an direct contact. So the at the time of getting term loan from the financial institutions, the financial institution and the customer is directly contacting with each other. Then third one is in security. Term loans are always secured. The assets acquired by the company out of term loan funds serve as the basic or primary security. Then the fourth one is in restrictions. While the company is getting a term loan from the financial institutions, the financial institution is imposing many restrictions while getting the financial assistance from the financial institutions. Then the next is an repayment schedule. While the company is getting a financial assistance from the financial institution itself, the financial institution is deciding the repayment schedule. Then sixth one is in conversion class. So conversion class is nothing but if the company is successful and the shares are equated at the high price, financial institutions may find it advantageous to convert the loan into equity shares. This we called as conversion class. The next is in retained earnings. This is the last long-term sources we are generating capital into an organization. Retained earnings are undistributed profits used to finance the requirements of the business. Often, companies do not distribute all the earnings or profit to shareholders. They retain a part or all the earnings. in some special cases or in the initial year for financing, expansion, diversification, etc. Such earnings are called retained earnings. Thank you, learners.